All right, everybody, happy Wednesday. We are back again tonight. It has been a continued beautiful month of July. Welcome in. Glad to have you in wherever you may be watching, whoever you may be listening to us, whether it be on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, X, Facebook. Glad to have you in. Those of you on Twitch as well. This is the Gem City Sports Podcast, brought to you, as always, by our friends at Rebich Investments. And while I sound like a dying horse right now because of my horrible allergies, Rebich Investments never dies because they are always good with keeping your financial guidance simple. If you want more info, head to their website, www.rebichinvestments.com, or simply call their phone number during normal business hours, 814-734-3433, 814-734-3433. So much to get into tonight. We're talking SeaWolves baseball and the all-star team that is Erie. Yes, they have an all-star team. We're going to talk about that in a little bit. We're going to compare them to some MLB lineups. Also talking hockey as well. Busy episode tonight with hockey. Matthew Schaefer going number one. Is he going to play in the NHL? Is he going back to Erie? Is he going to college? Ryan Zapolski is going to break that all down for us, the goaltending coach for the Otters. And we're going to talk Malcolm Spence and Kerry Terrance playing on the same team as well. Plus, were the Penguins really right to hire Dan Muse? And who the heck is this guy? Answering all those questions tonight. Hopefully, a little bit of a better voice than me tonight's Nick Artman, because I sound like I'm literally about to drown underwater. Nick, I hope you sound better than I do tonight, because my allergies have been killing me.
Listen, I'm ready to go. I will cover you. I've been, vocal warm-ups, some soothing tea. I'm here for you, buddy. But no, I'm glad I'm not the only one who isn't just struggling with allergies.
Oh, it's bad.
It's so bad. I feel like every time I go back to Walmart to buy the allergy decongestant and they have to scan, you buy the Sudafed, they scan your ID. I feel like they just look at me like, nope, I know what you're doing.
You're
it's
back
allergies,
again.
I promise you.
You're back again. It was funny because I was in the line for the pharmacy line at John Eagle tonight picking up a prescription. Not for me. I will attest, not for me, but I'm going and I'm picking out allergy medicine, and I just about bought 2 or 3 of those big, cylinders almost of allergy medicine. And people were looking at me like, dude, if you need help, there's other services available than this. And it looks a lot weird. So
this is why we live where things die. Winter is good for allergies.
It's great, and then you can't do anything outside. It's the blessing and the curse. You feel wonderful, but you just can't step outside your house. So it's one way or another. Who knows? Busy show tonight, Nick. We got baseball and hockey we're talking about tonight. I do want to ask before we start the show how your 4th was, because I know that you tend to be one that goes all out for the 4th of July. But I did not get a picture in the group chat of ribs, so I'm wondering, is everything okay? Blink twice if you need help.
Everything's okay. Everything's okay. I actually didn't cook this year, which is surprising. Wow. No, man, I left the grilling up to my dad this summer, or this holiday. So no, it was good. We went down to Edinburgh Lake, just kind of had some grilling out there. My mom's so funny, dude. She goes down at 8 o'clock in the morning to stake claim on this same bench, picnic bench that's down by Edinburgh Lake every time, and then she goes back to her house. But she's like the lady that goes out to the beach and puts her beach chair down and then goes back to the hotel for 2 hours.
Oh yeah.
So we had a great spot down by the lake, celebrating the 4th on Friday. So no ribs for me, but good food had by all.
Oh, I can imagine. By the way, next week, this is the foreshadowing. We were going to do it this week, but we want to get the full unit back together next week. Stay tuned. We are going to be doing a July 4th / summer food snake draft. So we did this for Thanksgiving. We did it for Christmas, movies. We're doing this for July 4th and summer food. So get ready. We've got that coming up next week down the pike. So
I will have a different 101 than I did last time.
That's assuming you get the first pick.
Well, I'm just saying, I will. Deviled eggs will not be on the list. So,
well, that's
if you don't know what we're talking about, go back and check the podcast.
Go back in December, because we almost banned Nick Artman from the show entirely after that take in December. None of the sports takes, but the deviled egg. It was
food takes. That's too much for you.
I think I have a crazy one too coming up in next week. So that's foreshadowing. Stay tuned. But speaking of juicy topics. Of course, the NHL draft was a couple of weeks ago. We haven't really gotten a chance to get around to some Otters talk or NHL talk, but we thought it'd be great to bring in no one other than the man who knows hockey himself better than almost anyone in this region. That's Ryan Zapolski, former Team USA Olympic goaltender, now the goaltending coach for the Erie Otters, and the hockey aficionado himself. Ryan, man, good summer so far?
Yeah, it can't complain. It's been hot, but it's been nice for sure.
Have you gotten out into the course? I see the hat.
No, I got this hat for Father's Day for my wife, and she sent me golfing on Father's Day, and that's the only time I've been out all year. And it's probably
Nice.
the two kids, so it's a little bit harder to get out. But definitely need to try some more.
Yeah, I can relate.
Oh yeah, same.
It's I tell you what though, I do feel like, and this is that quick shout to all golf courses. Why not let you just bring if your kids are well behaved, they should be able to come
Yeah.
out on the course with you. That's my personal opinion.
Oh, I agree. My kids would have a blast out there. I mean, they'd be out of control, running around everywhere, but they'd have fun.
Speaking of that, before we get into hockey, we took Bennett putting over the weekend. The first time he was ever putting. He has a great strategy, and I think I may employ this next time I play golf. He would hit the ball once off the front edge, off the tee. He'd pick it up. He'd put it a foot from the hole. He'd tap it in. Under USGA rules, you pick up a ball, you put it somewhere else, it's a one-stroke penalty. So he got a 4 on every hole. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm just going to shoot even par the next time I play around, and we're going to be good. It's going to be all right.
He cracked the code. That sounds like a plan to me.
Young and innocent. Oh, what it would be to be that. All right, Ryan, let's talk hockey. Let's start with the obvious, with the Erie Otters and the man who, for the second time in less than a decade, a former Erie Otter has gone number 1 overall. Matthew Schaefer goes to the Islanders with the number 1 overall pick. There's so much to talk about with Matthew, and I know you've gotten a chance to witness him, Ryan, albeit not for the entire season last year, of course, with his injury. Start with this. What made him deserving to be number 1 overall? We see him from a fan perspective. You got to see him on the ice. What was so special about him that made him just better than everybody else in this? What was a pretty stacked draft at the top?
Well, I mean, I think the obvious thing is, I mean, he's an elite skater and an elite passer. His first pass out of the zone is better than anybody's. I mean, the on ice stuff is pretty obvious. I think you watch him play, you understand the type of player he is. He can play 30 minutes a night. That's nothing for him. He's such a smooth skater. But I think for him, it's more like the intangibles, like the behind the scenes stuff, like the maturity of it. He was, I believe, 16 or 17 when I met him, and he was asking me about my kids, and like. No 17-year-old is that mature in my mind. Like I remember when I was 17, that was the last thing on my mind was asking an adult about their family. So he's just one of those kids. Like he's mature beyond his years. He's a great locker room guy. He loosens things up. I mean, the on ice stuff, like I said, it's there. Like you watch him play. Like he's up and down the ice. He's in all zones. He creates plays every time he's out there. He's got a great stick. Like there's so many things that he can do well. And it's just like when you stack that on top of his leadership qualities and just his maturity as a 17-year-old kid, I think for me, it was a no-brainer. I saw that early in the year. I mean, I know he was hurt, and for the fact that he was hurt and played, 25 games this year, and he was still kind of the consensus number 1 overall pick, just shows a lot about the type of person he is. So very well deserving. I mean, he has everything. He's got all the tools to be an elite player in the NHL for the next 15, 20 years.
I can only imagine, Ryan, the stress on a player going number 1, right? We saw with Connor McDavid, the media was all over him, and it's a little bit different in Erie because you don't get all the Canadian media that's over you until you get to the draft stage, right? So Matthew goes and, I'm sure had 1.5 million interviews, but it's not like he had local media, but he didn't necessarily have that his entire career in Erie in the short years that he was here. How did he handle himself, just from what you saw?
Yeah.
How was he able to handle himself through that process? And what has made him so mature as just a teenager who really should just be completing high school at this point, being able to adjust and adapt to all of that within really a 1-week time span?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. Like, there's probably a lot, about him personally. He's obviously, everybody knows his story. He's been through a lot in his personal life. I think that almost makes you grow up a little bit and just kind of become more mature, moving away from home at a young age. And even when he was younger, he had all that pressure on him. Not probably as much as a Connor McDavid did, but he still had that there. Got used to it in Canada for a long time. And then when he came here, it was almost probably like a little bit of, I can relax a little bit more, and I don't have that day-to-day, like people on my back. But he certainly had a lot to deal with, though. Like I can tell you, especially when he was injured, press box, like there was NHL scouts, especially the teams that were looking at the top 10 pick, interviewing him. Like he's always talking to these people. I think they get 1 interview a year actually. So, but almost every team came around and talked to him. The media stuff didn't really die down a lot, but I think there was, like, being in Erie, that like less hockey market, I think you can say, than Canada. It certainly helped him. So, I mean, there was just a lot of things about him that just I don't know what it was. He's just one of those kids that just grows up quick and just kind of understands the type of person he is at a young age and figured it out early.
No, I love that. And I think that speaks a lot. I mean, you've seen a lot of his character in his interviews and things like that have come out since, since being drafted to the Islanders. And we saw a lot of that in Erie. He was just a good guy to be around, and he was, just that locker room player as well. And you have to be that special defenseman to go first overall, right? I mean, there were some good players on the board, and the Islanders took a defenseman at the 101. So, I mean, that says a lot about what you need to know about his character, his style of play, and things like that. Ryan, my question is, a lot of the one knock that I think people have had on him, and it's not even really a knock, it's more of an unknown, is the small sample size that he's had so far because of the injuries, because of the personal history. This is a kid that you've got to see, firsthand as a coach for the Otters. Should we be worried about the small sample size? I guess should the Islanders be worried about his sample size, or is he ready to go for that? Maybe to make the value of that first overall pick.
I mean, I think it's certainly that's a fair point, and that's something I kind of talked about with some people too. Like, he's played 75 games, I think, in the OHL in 2 years, and that's not a lot when you have a 68-game season out of everybody else. And a lot of these guys too. Correct me if I'm wrong. Misa probably played 3 years in the OHL. He's just very young. I think that kind of factors into it too. The fact that he's been a successful player as I think he was the second youngest drafted player ever, maybe something like he's very young for his draft year. I think it's a valid point. I don't think it's. I'm not concerned at all. Like just watching him in the locker room, the type of kid he is, his skill set's there. There's no doubt about it. I mean, I think these teams do. They watched him since he was probably 15 years old. They understand the type of player he is overall. And his injuries weren't like. They were more like freak accidents. I don't think they were injuries that are like concerning, like his history. Is he going to have like ankle injuries or like things like that can be a problem for players? I think they were more like accidental injuries, which is something that kind of they don't worry about much. But no, I think the Islanders, like, it's, for my mind, he's a home run. He's gonna be captain in the NHL for 10 years. He's that type of player. He's that type of person.
He's a tall, lanky guy, too, and a guy who can skate and play both ends of the ice. And I think that brings us to the next point, because everyone's question is, and maybe Matthew knows this, maybe he doesn't, maybe the Islanders know this, maybe they don't, is what's Matthew Schaefer going to do? The crazy thing now is he's got 3 options, right? With the OHL and NCAA integration, he can come back to Erie, he can go straight to New York, or, if he wants, he can go play college. And just yesterday, we saw Gavin McKenna, right? Expected number 1 pick in the draft. He goes to commit to play to Penn State for a year. So that's on the table. I'm not going to ask you what you think Matthew's going to do, because again, you probably, and us, we would love to see him come back to Erie. But I personally don't know how realistic that is. I think if he is good and healthy enough, he's probably on the opening night roster, because the guy's a damn unicorn. I mean, he's an Erik Karlsson, but a better defender in my book. He's got a better view of the ice, and he can play 200 feet better than Karlsson. If you were the Islanders, Ryan, and you're in that GM room, what would you want Matthew to do? What would be your advice to Matthew Schaefer, knowing that he's got the talent, but he's still young? What do you think they'll do in terms of their encouragement for Matthew this upcoming year?
It's such a tricky spot for him, because if he wants to go the college route, that takes the NHL out this year, because he's going to have that college commitment. He'll have to sign his he'd have to sign his NHL contract before college starts. That's a tricky spot. I think for them though, I'd be surprised if he's honestly not on their opening day roster, and they might give him that that 10-game window that you can play in the NHL, see how it goes. If he's not fully ready, there's no harm in sending him back to the OHL to the Erie Otters, and there he can get to play a lot more games than he would in college. I know college is a 36, 38 game season. The OHL is 68. I think that would be kind of a deciding factor as well. But the other part of it too is like he has some room to grow physically. Like, I think that's one thing. You want to give him the weight room. He probably needs to gain a little bit of like muscle mass in weight. I think, especially in the NHL, those bigger guys like pushing around the front of the net. So that's another thing they have to think about. But I think if he's fully healthy now, he's a full 3 months of training in the summertime, going to that training camp. I mean, I think he's going to turn a lot of heads in that organization, and they're going to give him a shot. I think you don't take a kid first overall if you want him to wait a year. I know that's happened previously. Buffalo did that with Owen Power, but he was already in college at the time. I think for them, like they're going to want him in the NHL as soon as possible. They could use some help. I think you saw also they traded their best defenseman in New York this summer, so they also have that in their mind. Like he's ready now. They probably really believe in that. So I'd be really surprised if they don't give him a shot right away. And at the worst, send him back to the OHL for the rest of the season. He gets to play 65, 68 games in the OHL and then go through an OHL playoff and if you can bring him back to New York at the end of the year. So, I think they're thinking NHL now.
Here's a crazy thing that it makes this a small world. And I was just thinking about this as we were going through this, and Nick, you'll get a kick out of this too. So Connor McDavid gets drafted by Edmonton, right? And the talk was the superstardom, right? He's gonna play right away. But there's always that question of who are you going to play with? Well, he didn't necessarily play on the line with anybody, but what happens when McDavid goes to Edmonton? Well, he quickly gets two former Erie Otters in Warren Fogle and Connor Brown, of which he played with on the line last year. Chris Knobloch is now his head coach. They were all in Erie together. Matthew Schaefer could very well be paired up, because I think they would match up well with each other, with Adam Pelech, the former Erie Otter, who's a big, bruisey, rugged defenseman who could pair well with Schaefer. So it is funny because we talk about how Erie is compared to Canada, and understandably so. It's not the biggest hockey market. But then you look at these in-routes that have been made, and to me it's almost comical that to be able to have, Matthew Schaefer doesn't know Adam Pelech, they didn't play together, it would just still be kind of neat to be able to see two former Erie Otter number 1 draft picks to have a chance to potentially play with each other. And I think him and Pelech would be a great pairing on opening night.
It is, yeah. It's kind of funny how like almost goes full circle, but and the Otters have had a lot of players too that have been like mainstays in the NHL the last 10 years, and that shows a lot about the organization as well, like the drafting and the developing they've been doing. But that would be a pretty cool story if he's able to play with him.
No, I think that's special. I mean, that's special is the word that keeps coming to mind, and we've had previous conversations about Schaefer and just kind of all these things that he can do. What do you think is that one little thing, or maybe it's a big thing, that one thing that, and it doesn't have to be, a hockey skill. It can be a personality trait. It can be his McDonald's order. I don't know, whatever it is. What's that one thing that really makes this kid different to be that first overall pick as a defenseman, to be that first overall pick at such a young age? What's that one thing that just makes him different than the rest?
Yeah, I mean, the defenseman position, it's a tricky one. You don't get these guys that come along very often. I mean, I think you see like a Chris Letang, a guy, and Eric Carlson. I know they're older in the years now, but a guy that can truly play 30 minutes and not look tired like that. You watch Matthew play, like he'll come off the ice after a 2-minute shift and maybe he played 13 minutes in a period and you can't even tell he's like breathing heavy. Like he's one of those guys that naturally has that ability to just glide on his feet, be in the right spot. And that's another big part of it too, is he's just a really smart player. So he never puts himself in a bad position. I know that's a long answer for that short question, but there's a lot of things. I mean, it's his hockey IQ that allows him to like always be in the right spot and just play 30 minutes a night, and it doesn't look like it even affects him.
Yeah.
And I think you make a good point there, Ryan. You mentioned earlier, okay, does he have to get into the weight room and put on some pounds? Maybe he's only 150 pounds soaking wet right now, but I don't think he has to be much more than 170 or 175 because you don't want him to be that guy, right? I mean, in the Islanders, what do they need? Scoring. They literally need anybody to score with a pulse. And I think Matthew Schaefer could be a first or second pairing D-man. I also think he could potentially replace Tony DeAngelo on the first power play unit if he's that guy come mid-year. So I like it. I hope that he gets a chance to play with the Islanders. Selfishly, it'd be cool to see him come back and play for Erie, but time will tell. Let's talk other Otters, specifically one of them, Malcolm Spence, Ryan, who a lot of people thought would also go in the first round, didn't have the greatest of production last season, and he goes in the second round of the New York Rangers and now gets to play with his teammate, Kerry Terrance, who was involved in the Chris Kreider trade between New York and Anaheim, and now they get to play for Mike Sullivan. Penguins fans are crying in a corner somewhere. I know I certainly am. I mean, we've seen Kerry Terrance do well in Erie. He didn't really get an opportunity to showcase his skills in Anaheim. Now you get a Malcolm Spence who is, I would say, still probably has some room to be able to grow and succeed. Is Mike Sullivan the perfect coach? I think he is the perfect coach to be able to get the best out of these two. What say you and both Terrance and Spence now playing in New York?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, they'll both, they'll need that development stage too in the American League, so they won't have Mike Sullivan really like hand in hand with them for very, very long at the start. I think both of those guys will need some time in the minors to really hone your game a little bit and get used to the pro style of hockey. Both of them are built for that, though, in my mind. I think Carey's a bigger player, a really strong, powerful skater who's a great leader. So he's really built for pro hockey, and I think Spence as well. I mean, he like you said, his year was down a little bit from like an overall point standpoint. I think he had a pretty solid scoring year, which is a good thing to see. You want to see guys scoring a lot of goals in junior hockey. And then just overall, he's a guy that as the year went on, I felt like he got a little bit tougher, a little bit more willing to go to the net. There's sometimes like his weakness is when he tries to get too fancy and not kind of sway away from the type of player he is. And he's a north-south kind of guy. He's got that skill, but he tries to cut to the middles too many times and just kind of puts himself in a bad spot. When he started driving the net and going to that area, he scored a lot more. He was scoring those dirty goals. I think both those guys will for sure benefit from playing together too if they're in Hartford at the same time in the American League. Or is it Connecticut? It might be Connecticut now. Whoever the American League team is for the Rangers, that helps. And whenever you have that familiarity at any level, it'll certainly help you. And then I think once they get to the NHL, the respect that Mike Sullivan kind of has, those guys will really, they'll want to play hard for him and give everything. But obviously, if you get to that level, like you want to do everything possible to stay there as long as you can. And I think both of those guys have that kind of drive and determination to do that.
Ryan, Spence kind of had a first-round draft grade, and nobody really ever knows what's happening with the draft in rankings in any sport. But he had that first-round grade by a lot of scouts, and unfortunately he dropped. Well, not unfortunately. I mean, it worked for him. He still got drafted. He fell to the second round, but the Rangers use him on their first pick. What do you think maybe caused that slide? Is it just personal preference at that point, or was there something going on?
Yeah, it's tough to say. I think you maybe if you watch him play, sometimes he doesn't look like he's as like intense. That's one thing you really want to look for as a player. Like he's super intense, and there was almost a switch that had to go off sometimes for Spence to kind of get to that level where he got really really into the play, into the game. I think there was times where you might look at him and he looks a little bit like not totally engaged in the play, and maybe that was something that some teams noticed, and it also could go down to preference. I mean, I think you saw Pittsburgh especially, they drafted 3 guys that you probably didn't expect them to draft in the first round. Like they're looking for specific types of players to fit into their system, and that certainly has something to do with it as well. But I think he is a kid that kind of wears a chip on his shoulder too. Like maybe I hope that really motivates him going into especially the college season he's going to have. Gives them a really, that extra motivation to really prove some people wrong.
Yeah, Big Ten's going to be a fun conference this year.
Oh man,
I hate it. Oh my goodness gracious! I may have to get down to Pagula Ice Arena and watch a game. Penn State, Michigan specifically.
That place is going to be bumping this year.
Penn State was a win away from making the national championship game too. Well, let's finish with the Pens and Sabres, Ryan. We'll talk Pittsburgh. I never got a chance to ask you about Dan Muse, and when the hire was made, people were like, "Who?" Because we know the NHL is notorious for hiring the same 32 coaches in different spots. Kyle Dubas, he hires Dan, and then he makes, as you mentioned, a couple of what many people would call questionable picks, right? Maybe fits for the organization, but not best available. How does Dan Muse help this team? What's the direction that you think the Penguins are heading in as we now get ready for the upcoming season? And where do they sit with their new bench boss?
Yeah, I mean, I'm one of the people that, I had heard his name, but I didn't know a lot about him because you always heard of like the big names, like the Gerard Gallants or the Rick, the guys that have been around for a while. And I kind of like the move to go away from that because, I mean, in the NHL, they always say it's kind of like an old boys club. Like once you're in there as a coach, like you can stick around as long as you really like. I like the direction. I think Washington did that a few years ago with Spencer Carberry. They brought a guy that he had some success in minor pro, and then in the Maple Leaf system as an assistant, but wasn't probably a top candidate at that time. And I think Pittsburgh kind of did the same thing. They kind of dug deep. They found a guy that had, one thing that's really important for them, I think, in the next couple of years is how do they develop that? They have a large pool of draft picks now in prospects. How do you make these guys NHL players? And I think having a guy like him, implementing his systems, organization wide will be a big thing. You'll have some of those guys in the NHL next year, like Rucker McGroarty, he'll be in there. How do you get those guys to like NHL caliber, like top six players on a team? I like it for that. Like he's proven he's had success at every level he's played at, whether it's college or juniors or even international hockey. He's been a successful coach there. And then I think, you look at some of his intangibles, like his penalty killing system. Those things are really important as well. Really need to improve that. He's had success there with the Rangers. So it's an out of the kind of out of the norm hire, which I think for Pittsburgh, like it's good. You need to get the best out of your young players now, while also having the respect of like your superstar aging players. Like, how do you not waste their last couple of years and get everything you can out of them? I think that's the mix that they're looking for, and I think Kyle Dubas is in a hard spot regardless. Like that's a really hard hire to make.
Yeah.
I thought he did a pretty good job with it, and time will tell if it's the right pick or not. But I think I think what he's looking at and like what his mindset is, I can kind of see where he's going with it, and I don't have an issue with it at all. I think it'll be a good pick for them for the at least the development for the future, and just kind of hoping that they can kind of get some life out of those guys, like those older guys, and get a little bit more out of the younger players sooner. I think is really what he's hoping for.
You kind of alluded to it. You said you can kind of see what he's doing, and maybe help fill that in a little bit for the audience too, because a lot of people will say you can't rebuild a team and make a cup run at the same time. And it really seems like they are trying to walk that line. And I had my questions about it. You have aging players on the team. You still have Crosby, but then you trade away for all these draft picks, and it's like you're in, you're out, you're in, you're out, you're in, you're out.
Yeah.
So what do you see in that process, and what are they doing well in that process?
Yeah, it is a really fine line. Like, I think, and also if you look at what is out there, like if you hire, and I don't even know if he's available still, like a Rick Tocchet, like is Rick Tocchet going to get, like he might get the respect of those older players, and they'll play hard for him. Is he going to be able to turn those 21, 22-year-old, 23-year-old guys into legitimate NHLers right away? Right. I think his mindset is Dan Muse can, like he can get those players to kind of elevate and accelerate their development into true NHLers right away. And that's where like my mind, when I think about what he's doing, he's trying that. But again, it's hard to say if it's right or not. I think we'll know probably by Christmas if it was the right job or not, or the right hire or not. But I think overall, I think it's an interesting choice. But just the hope is that you want to give these older guys that chance, but they're also in a hard spot. Like I think you guys probably think the same thing. Is there a big move coming here? Like, is Carlson going, or is there a big move coming, a big splash coming? Because there's been rumors a lot. Even Crosby's been a rumor. So it's interesting to see what happens here.
Yeah, and you see what I think Brian Rust to me is the big guy. Is if he goes, then I think you see the domino start to fall. Raquel, one of the two wingers. Yeah. I do think, though, for everyone that looks at the Penguins line combos and says, well, there's no names on it, to my answer, that would be good. You've wanted youth in this lineup for so long. You had
that's when they were winning, right?
Yeah. You won the Cup in 16-17 with guys like Cenk Gensel and Tommy Kuhnhackl scoring goals. Yep. So it's going to come at some point, but it just may take a while for the Penguins. And we talk about taking a while. I don't know where to start with the Buffalo Sabres, so I guess we'll just all encapsulate it into one question. You and I, Ryan, on TV about a year ago, maybe a little less than that in the summer, both picked the Buffalo Sabres to sneak in as a wild card playoff team. We thought the Lindy Ruff hire was a great one to bring him back, a guy who had experience with the Sabres. He was the last coach to bring Buffalo to the playoffs. They make a couple of nice moves and get a couple of depth pieces. Their defense was spectacular. They had just re-signed a couple of their top guys to big contracts. Then the season happens, and we see Devin Levi fall off a cliff, and UPL can only be as good as he possibly can, and now it's UPL and Alex Lyon. But then they make the trade and give away JJ Peterka. What is this a contending team? Is this a selling? Like, what do you think? Wrap your head around this, Ryan.
I think
what's the Sabres? What are they doing?
I don't think anybody knows. I think it's a concern for me, like a guy like Peterka, like entering his prime. From what the media was saying, he wanted out of Buffalo, and I don't like that. That's not a good sign to me. Yeah. I mean, they have a lot of good core players there that have, we've talked about this though too. Like, how many years do they need till they're actually like a playoff contending team, then a championship contending team? Like, you're kind of wasting these like really prime years for some of those young guys like Thompson and Dahlin. I don't know the direction they're going. Like, there was nothing major happening in free agency. They kind of were pretty conservative with everything they've done so far. They trade away one of their best forwards for not really that much. They trade away one of their best prospects for like a third, fourth line type player. So I don't know. I think The NHL this year, especially, and I'm not going to kind of speculate on what teams are thinking, especially those teams that they know they're not going to win the Stanley Cup. You have Gavin McKenna coming in the draft next year. You see the Islanders as what were they, like the 10th overall odds to get the first overall pick this year? Grab it.
Pittsburgh.
You're right in front of Pittsburgh, exactly. So I think both those teams, like, you don't there, and I guess also the other thing is too, like, free agency, there wasn't a ton to go after either. So it's been a really hard thing for those teams that are kind of middle of the road to really elevate their team and make them contenders right away. So I think you're just kind of hoping that, after a year with Lindy Ruff, the system kind of kicks in, these younger players kind of get the best out of them, and maybe make a run at something. But I don't know. I don't know the direction to go in. Hopefully somebody there does.
Well, it's just crazy. I mean, you even look at their contract situation, and I tried to go over this and debate whether or not they were in a good spot or a bad spot, right? Because you look and you see, well, you've got 13.5 in terms of million in cap space. But then you realize, okay, Alex Tuck, who is one of your leading scorers, he's a UFA after this year. Do you trade him in the middle of the season? Zach Benson's going to need a contract extension at the end of the season. You got to have more than 3 defensemen, right? Power, Dahlin, and Samuelson. Kesserling becomes an RFA. Jacob Bryson becomes a UFA. Bowen Byram becomes an RFA this year. So it leads to believe, if you're Buffalo, I think, to your point, Ryan, and Nick, maybe you disagree, you have to make a choice. And I think this is what a lot of teams now in the NHL, specifically, let's look at Vegas, right, who makes the Mitch Marner trade. You either have to go all in, make your lineup older, and hope that those core players can get you over the hump, or you have to sell. Because I think more so than in any sport, really, especially more than the Major League Baseball and in the NFL, you get a window, right? You get a window where you make a bunch of trades for a 32, 33-year-old something power guys, and you hope your core can get you through. My question is just when are they going to do it? Because to your point, Ryan, if we get another year or two of no playoffs for the Sabres, then you start getting into the Dahlin trade question. You get into the power trade question, and at that point, the strength of your team becomes obsolete again.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's when do you kind of throw in the towel and say, okay, this isn't working, and we got to kind of rebuild it again? And as a Sabres fan, like, that's the last thing you want to hear, because it's been pretty bad for about 20 years now. They need to find a direction. They don't have one, and that was the kind of issue with the Lindy Ruff hire. Like, I don't know. He's an older coach. What's he going to get out of the younger players? Is he going to get some motivation? The talk always was, there wasn't a lot of, like, energy in practice. Practices were horrible. Guys weren't, like, growing and elevating their game, and that's a lot of it. To me, that's a big coaching thing, and that's why you kind of want to get those younger guys that can have that energy and kind of relate to the players a little bit more. That was the one, I think, issue I had with the Lindy Ruff hire, and still today, I think it's kind of a question mark. Like, what are you going to get out of these guys next year? Is it going to be another horrible start where they lose like 9 of the first 10 games and they're fighting it uphill all year long, or are they going to have actually a strong start and they can kind of find a way to build that confidence? And it's a confidence thing for sure. Like, winning is kind of winning is like an addictive thing. Like, once you get used to it, it becomes easier to do. But losing is also the same way. Like, if you get comfortable losing a lot, like, what's going to get you out of that slump? And a lot of times it's a big flashy move, and they just haven't done anything that's going to, like, reignite the organization and excite the players. And I wish they would have. I wish, like, you could have heard, I'm sure they had an opportunity to maybe go after Mitch Marner. Like, they had the assets. Like, for sure they have some assets there to do something like that, but they didn't. And it's kind of the same old story.
It's like they're like the Pirates of the NHL. It's like just constantly in rebuilding. Like, hey, let's draft these really good players and then trade them away before we can actually get to use them. I mean, it's just like a never-ending cycle for Sabres fans.
It feels that way for sure. Hopefully there's something on the horizon.
Yeah.
You think about, too, and you talk about the culture being bad, players want to leave. I don't think it helps when you see several former Sabres from those middle 2000s draft class win Stanley Cup. Right, yeah. Jack Eichel 3 years back, Sam Reinhart, of course, now twice with the Florida Panthers, Kyle Poso, Evan Rodriguez, Brandon Montour. Like, these are all former Buffalo Sabres who go elsewhere and win the Cup. It doesn't help you if you're a guy like a Dahlin, or in the J.J. Paterka's case, now officially traded. Do you want to be in Buffalo, or do you want to win Cups? That's kind of the message that you get now. And the Sabres are a tough spot. Penguins are too, so it might be a long season ahead. So we'll just hope the Otters can get things in the right direction as they have been the last 2 years, and we'll play for the local hockey. Hey, Ryan, it's been great having you, man. It's always wonderful having you. We got to do more of these throughout the summer and in the fall. But take care of yourself and get another round of golf in at some point for us.
Yeah, for sure, guys. Thanks a lot. Appreciate it. Thanks for having me on.
Take care, man.
Ryan Zapolski, our not a pseudo. He's a real hockey insider for us. He just doesn't get a chance to come on all the time because his life is very busy. We understand.
You know why? Because he's actually coaching hockey. That's why.
he's walking the walk. We're just here talking the talk.
Exactly.
A lot easier to do that from our spot in our chair. All right. We got a game to play in a couple of minutes, so we're going to get to that right now. But before, though, we talk about Rebich Investments. They don't play games with you, but they keep financial guidance simple, and they want you to win. And we want you to win too. Head over to Rebich Investments, www.rebichinvestments.com, or you can call their number 814-734-3433, 814-734-3433. Rebich Investments, keeping financial guidance simple. Well, the Erie Otters have had a couple of great years, but it pales in comparison to the Erie SeaWolves. 2 straight years with the title, 3 straight years in the Eastern League Championship, and yet somehow, someway, their lineup has gotten even better. Nick Artman, it's very rare that we see this kind of talent in the AA level, but in case you missed it, this is the lineup from tonight. May I present to you, arguably, the best AA baseball lineup that we maybe have ever seen. So, in case you missed it, Max Clark at the top of the lineup was called up to the Erie SeaWolves, along with the third guy in the lineup there, Kevin McGonigal. They are, in order, McGonigal 1 and Max Clark 2 on the Tigers' top prospect board. They were both called up to Erie on Tuesday. In addition, Josue Braceno, the guy who's down there in the middle of the lineup as the catcher, he's the number 4 Tigers prospect. So the SeaWolves now have the 1, 2, and 4 prospect in their lineup. They just won again tonight. 5 straight wins as they beat the Senators in a rain-shortened game. Not to mention, oh, by the way, Max Anderson, who was tearing the cover off the ball in the first half of the season, he's in the top 30 prospect. Thayron Lozano, who's number 5 on the prospect board. So in order, it's 2, 5, 1, and then just down to the 20s, and then 5 when it comes to the top prospects for this Erie SeaWolves team. So, Nick Hartman, I pose the question to you. Should we just end the season now and crown them back-to-back-to-back champs?
I don't know. I mean, this is... Yes, I want to say yes, because it is just an insane lineup for a AA team. And I mean, that just says a lot to the Tigers organization as a whole and what they're able to do and how they're able to build, year after year after year after year. It's an incredible lineup, and it is a time to be excited. Max Clark gets his first homer in AA tonight as well, too. I mean, and it's like, typically when you see a team like this, like the SeaWolves, right, you expect people to get moved up, and you're like, oh, you're left with, whoever's left, right? When they brought up those 3 guys, they sent up a couple of good guys too. The names are
Cruz got sent up.
Yeah, Cruz got set up, and then there's another one too, and I can't think of it now. But there was usually you're like, oh, okay, who are we left with? Well, in the SeaWolves situation, you're left with 3 top prospects, and this is an incredible time to just enjoy this, to get out to the ballpark and to watch these guys play, because you lost a couple to send to AAA, but you arguably got better by bringing up some guys from high A.
Here's the thing that amazes me too, and we talked with Roger Castillo a couple weeks back on the show, and we mentioned this throughout the entirety of the SeaWolves season, is how good this Tigers organization is in terms of depth. What amazes me is the top 5, yes. 6 through 9 is just as scary, because all 4 guys at the bottom of the lineup, Jay Colton, Chris Myers, who homered tonight, Justice Bigby, Carlos Mendoza, were all key contributors at some point in the 3 years of championship runs for the Erie SeaWolves. No, by the way, Austin Bergner has won multiple playoff games in Erie in the last couple of seasons for the SeaWolves. So what is scary, and I think as we get close to the trade deadline, this is what a lot of people are going to talk about. There's a lot of concern, well, maybe a Max Anderson could leave and end up going somewhere else. It doesn't make that much of a dent, because we are now seeing this lineup is at a point now where if you add one more guy, if for some crazy reason Bryce Rayner is able to skip 2 levels and make it to AA, you're sitting with the top 5 prospects in Erie. It just, and again, Erie's fans right now and Tigers fans at large should be very, very happy because
1000%.
this organization, I called a friend that is a friend of mine. He lives in Toledo. He's a big Tigers fan. And I said to him today, as the non-baseball expert that I am, but predicting the future, I said, they've got this trade deadline, this upcoming offseason, and probably the trade deadline in 2026.
Yeah.
If they can hit those three, they've got 15 to 20 years of a runway where they could win 5 to 7 titles.
Absolutely.
Realistically.
100%.
This is the Houston Astros of the early 2010s, but to me on steroids.
And not cheating.
Nick, I'm telling you what, this SeaWolves team, the 3 guys that got called up are going to probably be on the Double-A team through the end of the year. This team is realistically the number 1 contender to win the title again this season.
No, I don't. I joked with you at the beginning of this segment, but you're 100% right. I mean, it is just too hard to not think they have a good shot at that, And I fear they're going to run into the curse of Sposta, and I mean, not win a 3rd championship in a row, which sounds insane. But like you said, the Tigers have done this so strategically that they are having their own run as well, and then. But they didn't have to ever sell the farm to make their run because they still have that farm team to build out through. So it's just a really special team. But no, I think that, I do worry about, the Akron Rebel Ducks, the Rubber Ducks, in terms of having to run into them and things like that. There are a couple good teams, but there really is not many teams in the standings that I'm really worried about for the SeaWolves. I mean, baseball maybe above anything else is any game is possible. But, this team, if they can click with these new guys, because you still got to build up some of that chemistry, my gosh, look out. I think it's a very good possibility, you're going back to back to back this year.
And if you're Akron and you're Altoona, who's also got off to a good start in the second half, you're probably thinking you're lucky stars that Erie was the first half winner because I can't even imagine if they were not.
Right.
And the rest of the Southwest Division is probably thinking, well, we got 0 shots. So Erie's got all those great guys in the lineup. And so tonight, I thought it would be a fun game. And this is going to be a parity game because a Double-A team realistically is not going to beat a major league team, but this one might. So Nick Artman, we're going to play a game. I took the bottom 5 MLB teams in terms of the worst records in the Major League Baseball. Tonight, we're going to play Would You Rather Have This or That. Would you rather have the SeaWolves' current lineup, or would you rather have the starting 9 on the depth chart for the current MLB team, Nick? So we're going to see if we can get the majority of them here. We're going to try to go from worst to best when it comes to the worst MLB lineups and go from there. So you ready? Because this is going to be a big game here. This could determine a lot in Major League Baseball. We could get some tampering and tanking rules thrown out here if we get this right.
All right, I'm ready. Let's do it.
All right, here we go. So just so we get a reminder, we'll put some music on as well. Here is the SeaWolves lineup. Again, you see tonight, 3 of the top 4 prospects in the top of the order. Kevin McGonigal, Max Clark, Jose Braceno, Theron Lariziano in there as well. Number 2 in the lineup. So, again, Erie's just got a boatload of great prospects there at the top. So, first roster that is on the list is the Colorado Rockies. Would you rather have the SeaWolves, Nick, or the Colorado Rockies, whose depth chart, and this is not last night's, it's not going to be last night's lineup or anything, but includes at the catcher position Hunter Goodman, Michael Tagalia at first base. It's Orlando Arcia, the former Atlanta Brave, who is at second right now because of the injury to Estrada. Ryan McMahon is at third. Ryan Ritter taking a spot in the lineup over Tavar, who's on the 10-day IL. And then your outfield is Jordan Beck, Bretton Doyle, and former Tiger Mikey Montek. So, Nick Artman, the SeaWolves or the Colorado Rockies?
Listen, the Rockies are having a historically bad season. As they stand right now, 21-71. Pirates fans, if you think we have it bad this year, it's nothing compared to what Colorado is going through.
No.
Not to mention, they are minus 243 in run differential. That's insane. Like, there is so. Yes, I would rather have the SeaWolves roster because at least I have hope of a baseball team getting ready to play at some point.
Wow. I honestly, that would be one that I might take the SeaWolves roster, not because that I think they would be able to match up, but because I feel like I've got a better chance of someone collecting a big hit in that SeaWolves lineup
Sure.
than the Rockies. I'll tell you what, Colorado's a freaking mess. And the worst part about Colorado is their prospect pipeline isn't that good either. So, yeah, I would take the Seawolves too. Why not? I mean, again, you look at that lineup, and I even say Austin Bergner on the mound. He's no slouch either. So, all right, we're gonna both, and again, parity's sake, we understand MLB to Eastern League. We're gonna take the Seawolves lineup over the Colorado Rockies. So, if we're petitioning for another major league team, we think Erie would be over Colorado. All right, next up. Let's see if the Chicago White Sox will do. Their lineup, or depth chart, as it currently stands, Kyle Teal is behind the plate. Miguel Vargas stands at first. Chase Meadroth at second. Josh Rojas commands third. Colson Montgomery, the shortstop captain of the infield. Journeyman, Andrew Benintendi, who I think has played on every single AL Central team in his life, is in left field. Luis Robert, somehow still with the White Sox, is in center. Mike Tapman in right field. So you've got a couple of good names on that roster. Benintendi's been around the league a while. Luis Robert can hit the ball at times. A little bit of a tougher pick, Nick. The Seawolves lineup or the Chicago White Sox?
This one's close for me because, yes, the White Sox are just playing poor this year. Last in the AL Central, 30-62. But unlike the Rockies, they do have some people in their farm system like Colson Montgomery, Hagen Smith. So they are going through a rebuild. So you kind of know what you're getting in Chicago. You're trying to stomach these couple years and go around. But I mean, I think as currently sits, I mean, this sounds crazy because, again, I know there's a difference between AA and MLB, but I think you have more hope on the Seawolves roster right now than you do in Chicago. That's for sure.
Yeah, we're noting hope and consistency too. And again, I think you have to factor in the bottom half of the lineup. I'm going to keep harping on this. Chris Myers, who homered again tonight. Jake Holton's been a steadfast at first base. I mean, if you eliminate Justice Bigby, the three guys down at the bottom four, Jake Holton, Chris Myers, and Carlos Mendoza, were part of the top five in a large aspect of the season for the Seawolves last year when it came to their top hitters. I just think the depth portion of that would lead me to pick Erie again. So I'm going to go Seawolves again here too. So we're 2 for 2 with which lineup would you rather have, the Seawolves or the Chicago White Sox? So we just need one more, Nick, but then it gets more tricky because some of these teams are a little better. Not much, but a little bit. Number 3 on the list, the team that just fired both their general manager and their World Series winning manager, the Washington Nationals. Now, it's a little bit tricky. Maybe you have to factor in the pitching. Mackenzie Gore's an ace on the mound. Their lineup, and by the way, I just saw this Nationals team a few weeks ago at my brother's bachelor party. They are as horrendous as advertised. Keibert Ruiz is on the 7-day IL, so we'll put Riley Adams in there at catcher. Josh Bell did play when I was there in Washington, D.C. So we'll go between him and Nathaniel Lowe for first base. You can pick one. Luis Garcia Jr. at second. Brady House at third. C.J. Abrams. That guy's a tall drink of water. I got a customized shirt from him at the game. He's in at shortstop. James Wood. Speaking of tall drink of water, this guy can hit the cover off the ball in left. Jacob Young in center. And whenever Dylan Cruz is healthy, he's in right. So there you go, Nick Artman. The Erie Seawolves or the Washington Nationals.
So here's where the break starts to happen for me, okay? And I'm gonna split some hairs here for a second because I think I would rather have the Nationals hitting lineup, but I would rather have the Seawolves pitching staff. They're like a combined, like 5.15 ERA or something like that. I mean, they're near the bottom in ERA. In the Seawolves pitching staff. So I'm going to say half. I'm taking half of the Seawolves roster. I'm taking their pitching staff to pair with the Nationals batting lineup.
Yeah, I think Jaden Ham could give Washington a bit of a run for their money. When I watched them, I saw Jacob deGrom turn back the clock and completely shut them down for 8 innings. So if an older guy can come back and make a nice appearance, then I think it's very possible the Seawolves could too. I would probably pick the Nationals as well, but Erie gives them a run for their money. So there you go. We're going to skip over our final team. We're saving that one for last. I'm sure you guys can't guess who that one is. Let's talk about the team that shall only be named by one. The Athletics is the next lineup to speak of. They are not Oakland. They are not Vegas. They are just the Athletics. They're not very athletic, but at least they have some more wins than they did last year at this time. Mason Miller is the one that scares me, their closer. If Erie gets down in the 8th and 9th inning, I don't think they're going to win this game. Shea Langoliers is a good catcher. Nick Kurtz, recent draft picks at first base. Zach Galoff at second. Miguel Andujar, another journeyman. He's at third base. And right now, Max Schumann with Jacob Wilson's day-to-day is at short. And in the outfield is Tyler Soderstrom, Denzel Clark, and Lawrence Butler. Left, center, and right, Nick Artman. The A's or the Erie SeaWolves, which lineup would you rather have? This, as we're going through this is such a ridiculous game, but it's a lot of fun.
It really makes
it's a lot of fun.
Because you're taking an MLB roster over a AA roster every time.
Yeah.
But I agree, this is a lot of fun. Man, the Athletics, it will be crazy to see them in Vegas next year, which will be kind of weird. Oh, man, negative 131 run differential, sitting at the bottom of the AL West. I think they could use some juice. I don't love the middle of their lineup as well. So you know what? Just for fun, let's go SeaWolves to Vegas.
Okay. I think I would probably take the A's slightly here. I am factoring in a little bit of the pitching staff. I do think you have to consider that if these two teams played a game, pitching staff would be a factor. For sure. Mason Miller is untouchable. I do think Kevin McGonigal could whack one pretty hard. If Miller leaves a fastball up high in the zone, and McGonigal could be scary there. But for the sake of argument, and to make it a fun last team here, I will go with the A's as well. And again, keep in mind as we're doing this segment, this is for parity's sake. Like, we do think the SeaWolves may have a better lineup top to bottom than some of these MLB teams, but we're comparing apples to oranges. But it's still a lot of fun nonetheless because baseball is fun.
This is where Hallie cuts all of our picks and puts it out there that we're saying, the SeaWolves should be better than X, just to put us on blast.
Oh, I'm sure. Oh, people would have a field day with us. Well, they typically do with me anyway, half the time. But baseball's fun, Nick. Right? It's supposed to be a fun game. It's America's game, right? We all have fun when we're playing. Unless you're a fan of the Pittsburgh Pirates. This is the last one. The SeaWolves versus the Pittsburgh Pirates. Here we go. Henry Davis behind the plate, or whoever you want to platoon that day. Spencer Horwitz at first. Nick Gonzalez at second. Keep Brian Hayes still manning third. IKF sitting there in the captain's seat at shortstop. Tommy Phan in left. Big O'Neill Cruz in center, and Brian Reynolds in right. Nick Artman. So, big question. Two local teams. The Erie SeaWolves or the Pittsburgh Pirates.
This team is so bad. I'm going to flip what I did with the Nationals. I want to keep the Pirates pitching staff, which is one of the best in the league. And I want to bring the batting lineup from Erie and put them in Pittsburgh because they cannot hit to save their lives. How crazy is it that Paul Skeens has a 1.94 ERA and only 4 wins? That, how hard that is? Like, you have to really try to lose that much as a pitcher. Not him. I mean, you have to not have that run support because the guy is doing everything he can. And the pitching staff as a whole is playing great this year. The Pirates just cannot score at all this year.
No, they can. And I think, we've seen their offense be better under Don Kelly. I actually think Don Kelly's done a pretty decent job, but you just see so many times that, in the Seattle series especially, they couldn't score runs. And it's pretty obvious from the opening tip. They don't score in the first 3 innings. They're not really going to score at all.
No.
And it's just been that way for a very, very long time. Now, before we end the show, I do think it would be cool because I saw this rumor float around. ESPN posted an article about it. We're talking baseball. There's been a lot of rumors out there about a Paul Skeens trade, right? So I want you to put your GM hat on here, Nick. I'm going to give you the trade that the ESPN proposed for Paul Skeens. For the Detroit to move to Detroit for the Tigers. And it makes sense because we have a couple of guys that are on the SeaWolves right now. So if you are the GM of Detroit and you are in that building right now, the ESPN proposed trade for Paul Skeens, Max Clark, Kevin McGonigal, Jackson Jobe, Colt Keith, and former SeaWolves standout Sawyer Gibson-Long. That is a massive trade. Would you make it for Paul Skeens?
Man, that's a lot. That's a lot. And that's so hard for me to be unbiased because there's so many good, current and former SeaWolves on that roster that's like, man, I would love to see Jackson Jobe in a Pirates uniform. But unfortunately, I don't know. If you look at other trades from history too, because I knew we were going to get into this, so I pulled this up too. In '98, Randy Johnson, I think, is the closest you can get to like a Paul Skeens type of pitcher that could completely take over a game. I'm not comparing Randy Johnson to Paul Skeens and vice versa. But you already, like, the Mariners had traded away Randy Johnson and got Freddie Garcia, Carlos Guillen, and John Halama, which worked out for them. But, I mean, there was just so much that went on. So, how do you quantify Paul Skeens, I guess is what I'm trying to say. You had CC Sabathia go to the Brewers in 2008, Chris Sale to the Red Sox in 2017. So it's so hard to see what that's worth. On one hand, it's like what here we go. Let me put it this way. It's like what we talked about with the Sabres. Yes, that is, I mean, you're getting a lot of really good quality talent if you make that trade for Paul Skeens.
Yeah.
But then I feel like you're in the Sabres situation where you're just constantly rebuilding and you're not doing anything around them. As young as Skeens is and as talented as he is, I would actually be trying to buy at the trade deadline. Or I would be looking at the offseason and going, we need to find some hitters and we need to open up the checkbook and we're going to try and do that. But unfortunately, that's just not how it goes in Pittsburgh. So they're gonna keep riding it out. They're gonna let him put butts in seats because that's how they need to make their money. Yep. They're gonna hold him until they can't, and then they'll trade him. But man, it's tough to think about trading a guy like Skeens right now.
Yeah, I'll tell you what. If I'm Detroit, I would pull the trigger on that trade in 2 seconds. Yeah. I think it would work.
If I'm Detroit, absolutely,
in every single way. And a lot of people have said with that trade, and they look at it and they're like, "Oh my God, we're trading our top 2 prospects." Our stud ace, who when healthy is second, probably maybe third to Casey Mize and Skubal. Yep. But here Detroit, what they need more than anything is team control. They do not have the one downside that Detroit will run into is paying players. They do not have a lot of guys under team control for very long. Sure. So you can get Paul Skeens, who'd be under team control till 2029. Arbitration doesn't kick in until 27. And you get Paul Skeens and Tarek Skubal for a playoff run.
Thank you.
Clark and McGonigal don't really decimate your farm system that much. I mean, yeah, you lose your top 2 prospects, but you're still going to be a top 5 to 10 prospect team in the majors. And the other thing that I think you have to consider as well, there's no guarantee Tarek Skubal wants to re-sign in Detroit.
Right.
So you want to talk about a damn good insurance plan? How about maybe the one guy in baseball who's a better pitcher currently than Tarek? In Paul Skeens. So, I don't know. If I'm Detroit, I'd pull the trigger on that. If I'm Pittsburgh, I'd probably pull the trigger on it too, because at the end of the day, it's not going to make a difference, and I'd rather get 2 darn good prospects for him than a pile of worms.
Yeah.
But that's why we're not in the GM chair. But this was a good exercise. I think next time we should probably do this, if the Otters are making a big run, maybe we do this with some NHL teams. Maybe the Penguins and Sabres were thrown in there too, Nick.
Listen, I hope the Penguins aren't down there, because that means they're falling into the same pit the Pirates are.
Oh, they nearly were. They were in the bottom 5 of the league for a long time. But then, as they typically do, Sid gets them to rise from the dead, and they get within 10 points of a playoff spot, and then they realize, well, we're just the Penguins. We were only able to...
Maybe they can get Zapolski to play goalie, because they still have to figure out who's doing that, too.
I was going to say, Tristan Jarry ain't the answer. Yoel Blomquist, you better step up, or Ryan's going to have to strap on the pads.
Woo!
Oh, my gosh. All right, we're out of here. Great show tonight. Nick Artman joining us, Ryan Zapolski joining us, Hallie Parker working her wonders behind the scenes. We're back on Monday for Flagship City Sports Talk at 9 a.m. This has been the Gem City Sports Podcast, brought to you as always by Rebish Investments. Take care, everybody. Have a wonderful weekend.